Okay, so connection's really bad today, so I don't know how well this is going to work from the jungle. Can try it anyway. The topic today is something that I've been thinking about recently because I've got down with some projects, so I can put some effort and energy into some of the talks about languages and learning languages and all that pseudo intellectual stuff that the people on YouTube want to babble about. And this thing is about something that kind of irks me because you get all those dynamics there of the pseudo quasi intellectual people and the people who are trying to found something as if they have some sort of divine right. So, and that's this whole topic about polyglot and polyglots is the plural, and polyglottery, which is a horrible word. This has been brought to prominence by Dr. Arguelles. Again, on the polyglottery, he knows that the term is cumbersome and academics don't like it for the mostly the reasons I'm going to go into. And he's thought about it and went back and forth, vacillated on it some, but he is sticking to that name, and there are quite a few people who are using that name and using the name polyglot. Also, he originally, from what I can divine from what he said and what he's written, is that he used it as a term to sort of state that the people who are being multilingual, because that's the better term, and multilingualism is the noun that he's trying to use, polyglottery for, the polyglottery of a nation. So it can take that definite article, it can be used as a noun. So this is the multilingualism of the country. Anyway, so the definite article is usually a very good test. Giving you free information here. It's a good test in English. The indefinite article is not always precise at revealing what is really a noun. It can still reveal some sort of more adjectival words. Anyway, so he's used this polyglottery term, to signify that the people who were learning many languages, or they were trying to speak many languages, were doing it on their volition. It wasn't part of their immediate environment, whereas multilingualism could be thought of as people who were multilingual because of their environment and not because of their own volition. Well, I take exception. I'm going to go into this in a great detail because there's a lot going on here. So it's sort of the nature versus nature debate going on. So how much of the nurturing of the sociological environment, the society that you're in, has precedence over your own volition, which would sort of go to free will, which has been disproven as it's non-existent. You can look at a lot of researchers in that area that it's just an illusion. Sam Harris goes into that. A guy at Stanford goes into that. That's just two people. There's loads. Anyway, so what is going on then? So this polyglottery idea is that people are intentionally trying to become multilingual, that they're intentionally learning languages. And in his and Arguelles idea, it's because he wants to know about the literary underpinnings, history, and sort of greatness of the past of that language, which again leads him only to those languages that have a script. And all these people on YouTube can't even touch 90% of the world's languages because they don't have scripts. So that, once again, they're in the minority to begin with because they're incapable of handling this. But so let's just go into this whole idea again about this. So they're looking at a few languages in the world, but a few languages that have had great impact, meaning that they've spread to the world, or they have a history, or their literary background is such that it's become classics, as in the study of classics, for example, Latin, Greek, Italian, and French and German. All of these things, then it went the way that Arguelles went with his Old Norse and that sort of thing, looking at that. And you can go to Sanskrit for the Vedas and on and on. There's all those, that impact for which polyliteracy was stated as a word to be used, which is a little bit better because that's what he's doing. He's looking at things so that he can read about that culture, that past culture, and connect with it. He's not interested in those languages that he cannot read and write in. And everyone on YouTube is doing the same thing. Not that they're writers or that they're aficionados of literature, but they're only dealing with those languages that they can read and write. So you got polyglots who are saying this, and you got multilinguals, which somehow they're trying to say like multilinguals are inferior in a way because they could be illiterate. So what? Most of the world's population is illiterate. That's not a superiority thing. There's superiority about having a script because it makes it easier to diffuse information. And the printing press increased that. Now the internet, which has dwarfed all of that. But let's not get into those platforms of media. Let's get into the idea of multilingualism. Multilingualism is a pragmatic thing, which is what I've been arguing for here on YouTube against people like Lao Shu, who are, superficial in the languages that he knows. As I said in another video, he can't explain medical emergencies in all those languages. He can't probably shop for shoelaces. He has to go at best, which is a coping strategy, which is okay. He doesn't know the actual words, meaning that he can't translate the word from his L1 to the L2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. But if you get to the level where you can go around those, you're sort of, whatever, you're making a statement like, je cherche les codes pour les chaussures, it's not shoelaces, but if you're stammering around trying to get that across in French, they're going to probably know, oh, okay, what you're trying to get to. But anyway, so back on this thing. So the multilingualism is great because the term, to me, has the semantic weight of saying the person speaks more than one language, several languages, like someone in India. There are quite a few. There are some places where the males will speak one language to the wife, and the wife will answer back in another language, because there's a whole dynamic there of the power gender differences. We can go into that, and in a different video I can go into that. That's going on. So there are people who are speaking 5 or 6 languages a day. People who work in trading centers, as in they were old trading centers, or small countries like Liechtenstein, Luxembourg. People use Holland quite a bit as a country where the people speak a lot of languages. Some do. I cannot say every single one of them. That's for a different video. I found that people in northern Morocco speak 5 languages well, very well, actually. I was actually the most impressed with that. You're talking just about a geographical area. I was more impressed with them than anybody else that I'd seen, because a lot of it was just their self-learning, not being forced in a school setting, which is what happens like in places like Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, happens in Holland. So it wasn't institutionalized. Anyway, so multilingualism to me has this sense, and to most of the world, and to everybody who's really researching this stuff, means people who speak many languages. It can also mean that people can read and write those languages, but that's not the first thing, is that they can speak them. So polyglot in itself, many tongue is what it translates into English. So it actually would mean that you're speaking and listening, obviously, to the language. You're not writing or reading it. That's a totally different skill quality, and it's just a representation of the oral speech. Anyway, so you've got the people. So what's the difference here? So the thing is that multilingual, saying the person's multilingual or I'm multilingual, doesn't carry the pseudo nonsensical academic want-to-be credibility. Because I'm telling you, these YouTube people don't have any scientific or academic credibility. In fact, they spend a lot of their time trying to shoot it down, denigrate it, deny it. Their detractors or naysayers like Steve Kaufman, except when Steve Kaufman can try to grab onto some sort of little thing that he can try to use as bolstering his position. Like he'll misquote Krashen, for example, and some other people. He'll say this and that, but he'll try to dismiss, denigrate anybody who's an academic or intellectual because he doesn't have those skills. But Steve, you don't have value. You're not an authority. You have no credentials, And what happens in the YouTube community is that people have taken this Polyglot YouTube community. I hate this. That's their terms. I hate it. So it's not a community. It's not a community in the sociological or anthropological sense whatsoever. Okay, these people don't know each other, they don't interact with each other, they don't use kinship terms with each other. They wouldn't even want to talk to each other. They're not holding banquets. They're not going on pig hunts or anything that would, in anthropological or sociological terms, denote community. Anyway, so within their realms of like-minded people, which is what they gravitate towards, is that they want to say, yes, we're polyglots. We're not multilinguals, we're polyglots, so that this has some sort of fake pseudo sense of, yes, we know about learning theory, we know about linguistics, we know about applied linguistics, we know about research into data that proves what we're doing. No, you don't. None of them know any of that stuff. None of them are teachers. None of them have gone through it. And they want to. So what they spend their time doing is saying, "Hey, classrooms don't work. Teaching is horrible because they can't do it." Number one, they can't do it. Number two, they're unwilling to go in and try to change it because they don't know all the spheres of influence that they have to deal with. It's not just coming in there and promoting, okay, I'm going to do this in this classroom because this is what I think is going to work. Number one, you're going to have to show data. You're going to have to prove that it has to work. And then you also have to include all the learners, which they're not doing. So anyway, they're trying to get this sort of pseudo quasi feeling with this word polyglot that, hey, somehow we've got some more scientific data behind us, or we have this intellectual ability that's missing in the multilinguals, which is number one where I take exception, because these people are not academic, not whatsoever. You ask these people to cite things, they won't do it. Number one, they don't do it, they can't do it, they won't do their research, and then they want to try to denigrate those who do that, which is a complete sign of a detractor, someone who, it's like this, okay? Here's an analogy. It's more popular now for these polyglot type people than it is for the academic people or the very serious person who's trying to research. And that is akin to switch to a simile now instead of a metaphor, to McDonald's or Burger King. A lot more people eat there than eat at five-star restaurants in whatever country. The reason they do that is because it's convenient for them. They don't have to invest as much time and energy into going to a better restaurant. Number two, their standards are much lower. They actually think, some of these people, when they're eating a taco burger, that they're actually having something that is Mexican. They are not. Or pizza fries, as if this is Italian food. In fact, the entire pizza industry in the United States and Canada is nothing like what it derives from, but people think they're eating Italian food, is my point. The same thing with the polyglots. They think that they're being academic when in fact they are not. Nothing they could never be published. And that's Steve, for example, go on him because he's such a big proponent of decrying anytime someone mentions things about academics or intellectual studies, because he dismisses it totally. Steve, get published in an actual research journal proving data. Can you do it? No, you cannot. I dare you to try. The other people haven't done that either because they can't. Now, Arguelles is in a different position because he is an academic. He's a philologist. So he has one realm, and what he's trying to do when he started this polyglottery movement, which they kind of grabbed onto, is like, yes, I will go to this institute. I want this institute to be where I live, though. I don't want to have to go to it. There's a lot of logistics and pragmatics problem. Number one, where is it going to be put? I would assume it should be put in some place that's actually cheap for the overhead, which would, Southeast Asia is probably a good spot for it in the world. Eastern Europe might be okay also. It's not the United States or anywhere in North America. It's too expensive. But number two, he's going to have to get accreditation because no actual university students will go to it if they can't be reimbursed on credits, more or less. Three, what are the costs going to be, and how is he going to pay for it? Because I'm telling you, these YouTube people are nothing but scamming people looking for cheap ways to learn. They want everything free. They're not the target audience. And or you got Steve Kaufman, who also wants to decry all these things because he wants to sell his product, which is what? Directed at self-learners. And it only has to do with basically reading and writing. That's the majority of what he's trying to sell to people. So he can't deal with non-scripted language, number one. Number two, he doesn't want to deal with just oral conversational things. He doesn't, of course, he's going to say that his method is what he's promoting, producing is okay. So he's in there as a capitalistic endeavor. So are some other people, you know, another guy doing the tour. I'm going to cover this about the books that they choose to use and their resources and materials, because it's just blatantly obvious how retarded, I was going to use the word retarded the entire concept of what they're doing is, you know. It's as if, yeah, that's another video, so I won't go into that tangent. But anyway, all of it's tied together because it shows that it manifests itself in this pseudo-intellectual polyglottery and polyglot idea. And the Polyglottery Institute, which is a fine idea, but I have to say that Arguelles' model paradigm is set sort of around the 19th century sort of education, which is fine, because there was a lot to be said about learning the classics and doing the classics and having to invest a lot of energy and time. But what a lot of people have mentioned, it's not applicable to today's society for people who are looking at university as a job training area, because really universities were never set up as job training. Thing that happened after World War II. That's another video too. But the mindset of almost everybody, especially in the United States, is that a university is a job training site. It's not. You don't go there for its intrinsic value. You know, you go there for its instrumental value, for what it will do for you, instead of what it will what it will do for you extrinsically, not intrinsically, okay? And that 19th century model is about intrinsic value. There's a lot to be said about that, but but the problem is that model doesn't apply well. It applies to a very small niche market of people, and those people are already being educated in that sort of environment. So he knows, he ran into some of them along his path. But so he's dealing with all these problems, and the main problem that I'm saying with the term polyglot and polyglottery is that he's running to these people who are basically people who eat at McDonald's, but claiming that they have great taste, you know, that they have great standards, that they have this lofty standard, that they're trying to do something, you know, they're the movement of languages. They're not. What they are the general masses who resort to opinion because they have no facts to back themselves up, and then want to debate on their opinions, their opinion versus this and that. And a lot of them don't have well-formed opinions. Some of these people have never even lived in another country. They're thinking that they're learning about another language and the culture. They are not. You know, Sapir-Whorf, they didn't even understand a Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which has been proven correct. And bet me money that it hasn't, because I can prove it to you. But I'm not on here to prove myself to you for nothing, you know. I'm going to start getting more mercenary about a lot of this stuff, instead of handing out all this free information and proving to you people that I know what I'm talking about, which I said from video number 1 that I do know what I'm talking about. So bet me money, you know, bet me money, and let's put it in escrow, and you can you're going to end up losing, okay, on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Anyway. So moving back to the polyglot, I like the term multilingualism, because when you say, hey, I met somebody, oh, I'm a multilingual, nobody thinks then, oh, okay, this guy's some sort of pompous, pseudo-pedantic person. But someone comes, I'm a polyglot, you know, meeting of polyglots, I'm a hyperglot, you know. This automatically now has this connotation, semantic force, of that it is a person who's intellectual. That they can now give you data, that they can give you the methods. You know, when someone says, hey, so what is the best way to learn a language? They don't know any research. All they can do is give you their own personal ideas and opinions. And that's what you find all over YouTube. I think this and that. And a lot of times there is clear studies been done on this, and they know about learning. They don't know about anything about education, basically. They don't even know operant conditioning. and how well that did actually work and still does work in language learning. It doesn't have much to do with language acquisition, but for language learning, which acquisition and learning are two different things, because acquisition is a total brain. Let's get into that, and learning is more of a left brain thing. Especially when I was talking about, look at my biggest tool for learning languages. That definitely operant conditioning works at that approach very well. Anyway, so the idea that when you say you're a multilingual, people don't say, "Hey, well, okay, give me your theories on Chomsky's universal grammar," or what did Van Valen find about Durable that does not apply to English, or what is the spatial orientation of Aboriginal tribes in Australia different than, say, someone in England? How is it reflected in the language? Those people can't answer any of those things. Those are linguistics questions for linguists. Okay, but saying that you're multilingual, people are not going to say, "Hey, assume that you know all these workings. You're using the language. That's the difference there." Okay, multilingual comes across to me and to academics as someone who uses the language. Polyglot comes across as someone who has researched and studied the language and therefore also knows about the language and doesn't just use it. So therein lies the problem. And same way, polyglottery is a horrible name. The study of multilingualism. The Multilingual Institute works far better than the Polyglottery Institute. It's just horrible, It's also a neologism, and in real sciences, you should never create a new word when there already is a word that can fit that bill. That's considered pathetic. You have to use vernacular. It's not considered highbrow, to say the least. So, polyglottery, and you have multilingualism, it's better. In Multilingual Institute works far better than the Polyglottery Institute or Institute of Polyglottery, if you're gonna use that instead of a genitive. Anyway, so the fact being that I want to get to this idea that the people out there calling themselves polyglots, they're like it hinges once again back to that idea of the people calling themselves linguists when they're not linguists. Okay, the only people who believe in this are the people who are, once again, the type that eat at McDonald's and Burger King. They're not the people who have a deep understanding of the food. They're not people who value the food. They're not people who value what goes into the ingredients, the preparation of the food. They don't value the ambiance, the experience. They don't value any of that. They're just someone who's just in there, So that's the difference, saying that you're a linguist when you're not a linguist, It's like their gravitation toward the words polyglot and polyglottery. It's not true. You're multilingual. Very clear. You speak more than one language. Okay, so that's what I would like to get to. I noticed there's so many tangents here. I could do an hour and a half just talking about tangents that are salient to this entire discussion, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to try to get a little bit on this. So, like the recap here, polyglottery shouldn't be used as a term. It's just horrendous. It's non-academic, and it's for an academic pursuit, so it should be removed. The word polyglot has connotations of someone who's researched and studied the language and also knows about language learning methods. And that's what carries weight with it, that the person that you're speaking to is some sort of authority, whereas multilingual does not. It fronts the person as someone who uses the language. It's much clearer in what they are and what they do. So that's where this is coming from. I've noticed once again that I'm starting to get people with a more profound sense of languages and learning and wanting to know. And I got people asking me, why do I do these in English and not switch to some other language? Because the majority of people on here are in this thing. Yes, it's true. I mean, if I wanted to speak to the Spanish linguist, I would do this in Spanish. And the same could be said for another, like the French, right? There are people that are researching this, but in those languages that have done a lot of work. And the point being, though, I'm putting it out here because most of the people on YouTube are doing it in English, number one. Number two, this is the fastest way because most of the research that I've read is in English, although other languages have fit in to the research. So I've taken it in that, so I'm giving it back in that. The idea here, the content is more important than anything. So I'm giving you high level content, and a lot of people respect that now, and I'm starting to lose the detractors, the sycophants of the McDonald's and the yeah, Burger Kings on the YouTube, as it were, to use a reference mark. So that's good. And once again, yes, you know, how dare I demand that you have a real name and real photo to make comments, because you're not valid. If you can't produce that, you're no one. Once again, you're just a YouTube person that's trying to spout their opinion, which means nothing to anyone, okay? Only to Steve Kaufman and Lao Shu and a bunch of other people like that think that somehow that has weight. Hey, the common man. Yeah, right. Okay, so let's listen to the common man about surgery or space flight. Oh, those are not perfect analogies. No analogy is, but it drives in the ad absurdum sort of argument that you're trying to make with what you're saying. But that's it for now. So there is a little talk on the entire idea about removing the word polyglottery from the lexicon, which is already, I don't think any academic would dare use that word. Anyway, so let's just keep it with this topic. See ya next time around.